Here we go!
Since its opening on July 17, 1955, Disneyland has been a staple vacation spot for millions of families around the globe. Not only has it served as countless fun and endless joy for those of all ages, but it has given us some of the most diverse miniature lands that we have ever seen in a theme park. Walt Disney's creation has surpassed anything that he thought was possible, and even in his death, the park continues to expand and grow beyond his wildest dreams. In doing this, Disneyland itself has become a beacon for visual research and visual culture analysis nationwide. From its many different entrances to its array of different rides, Disneyland has become one of the many Disney theme parks on the planet and has offered some great insight into what we would call a metaphor for the evolution of a human being. Today, we're going to take a look at how each individual land at Disneyland takes us to a different point in our evolution from birth to adulthood. To begin, let's talk about where it all started. Fantasyland, or a visual metaphor for how we find things larger than life when we are all children. In Fantasyland, most rides are created around the different cartoons and animations that you would see in your early childhood. Rides such as Peter Pan, Dumbo, Alice in Wonderland, and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride all seem to stem from animations when Disney first started up. In Week 5, we talked a lot about the anthropology of space and place and the built environment around us. One very important aspect from the chapter was the idea of embodied spaces. This is the idea where physical, psychological, and emotional experience takes spatial and material form. Since most of the rides in Fantasyland stem from children's-based animation movies, we can assume that the ride themselves have become embodied spaces and have become congruent with the ideals and emotions of a child. One great example of this is the Peter Pan Dark Ride. The ride itself emulates the movie scene for scene. On the ride, you sit atop a flying pirate boat, where you sail through the story of Peter Pan with beautiful imagery of London below you, as well as the island of Neverland. Later in the ride, you may encounter many of the main characters, as well as the main villain, Captain Hook. In the end, everyone of all ages will be reminded of the messages presented in the original movie of letting your imagination run wild and not letting your inclination for the familiarity keep you from new and exciting experiences. With this ride being a staple of children's visual culture, it seems as though having this ride is an ideal way to remind people of their past, as well as reinforce the innocence and emotional appeal we have as children. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Adventureland. Just like the other parks in Disneyland, Adventureland has architecture and different types of rides and attractions that speak a lot to the adventure aesthetic of the area. Rides such as the Jungle Cruise, Indiana Jones, and Tarzan's Treehouse take you back to a time where we as humans wanted to explore and find out new information for ourselves and others. As the theme of exploration and adventure unfolds, we begin to see how Adventureland is truly a visual analysis of humans when we reach our preteens, our teens, and our young adult life. When we are young adults, we tend to attempt and bend the rules in order to find what's the furthest we can go. Sometimes that may get us in trouble, but some dare to say that you may learn more by making mistakes in the real world than you ever could sitting in a classroom. As an example of this, Tarzan's Treehouse is a great metaphor for how teenagers always feel like an outcast in any situation they are in. On this attraction, you walk through a treehouse depicting the story of Tarzan and how he went from being a social outcast to being accepted by his own kind. During your walk, you encounter many of the issues that Tarzan struggled with. Some include learning how to read and write, how to face challenges that seem impossible, and learning the value of the family bond. Our history is revealed to us in many different ways. Sometimes it's something as easy as looking at an old photograph of us as children. Other times we really need to look in depth to see where we have been and what we have become. In a book called Toward the Visualization of History by Mark Moss, he talks a lot about how Disneyland has fantasized the idea of a memory and how anyone of any age can attach a memory or recall a past experience in any part of the park. Due to the architecture and layout of Adventureland, the mini park itself has become synonymous with human exploration and how we choose to go above and beyond to find what is really out there in our young adult lives. Lastly, I want to talk about Tomorrowland and how it showcases what humans are and what they could be in the coming years. As humans, We always strive for more technological advances the older we become. Technology has been known to make our lives easier, as well as provide care to those in need. Technology also allows us to explore things that we never thought possible and be a part of the larger universe. Originally, Walt Disney was known for his futurist views, and through his television programs he showed the American public how the world was moving into the future, after many renovations and many rides being moved out and having new ones moved into Tomorrowland. The ever-changing future ideal of the land itself has yet to be lost to the general public. As adults, we work. We go day to day using technology to create and distribute the labor that society produces. In doing this, the attractions and rides in Tomorrowland emphasize daily life for us and fantasize how they could be 10 times better in a couple years from now. Whether it be exploring the cosmos, like on Space Mountain, fighting aliens, protecting the human race, like on Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, or if it's something as simple as learning to reduce our carbon footprint on Autopia, the future has a lot of potential. Obviously, I think we are a little far away from having to fight for the human race against aliens, but in the long run, Tomorrowland shows us that anything is possible. A great example that showcases how adults can still learn is Autopia. Newly revamped in 2016, the ride is now presented by Honda and showcases brand new robots and a new storyline as you drive down the track. You may find a couple scenes of robots helping a small little bird in different situations along the route. All of the scenes feature vehicles that are electric powered. Not only do you get to see the future before you, but you get to follow along and learn to reduce your carbon footprint 1 mile at a time. In the end, many say that it is possible to teach an old dog new tricks, and Autopia is no exception. Overall, Tomorrowland will always be a beacon of technological advancement for years, and something we can look forward to while our young adult life comes to an end. When it comes to human evolution, an adult is usually the one who knows everything, the person that you can rely on for information, and the person who seems to always be right. But in Tomorrowland, it can take you to a point where you don't know what will happen, and that's okay. The future is something that will always be unplanned and spontaneous. Things can change in the blink of an eye, but at the end of the day, it's always something to look forward to. Now, after a lot of analysis and a lot of what my views on the subject were, I thought it was about time that I went out and explored what other people had thought about this and if they shared my views. Some answers were pretty spot on, but others took a different perspective on it, so now I'd like to have you listen to what a couple people had to say about it.
If I had to pick a land to correlate to the evolution of man, I would probably pick Adventureland, just because it starts off with the Tiki Room, which is like a very primitive state with all the birds and stuff like that, and then you go to Jungle Cruise and it's still kind of animal-like with like a human influence on it, and then you get to Indiana Jones, which is like adventure and stuff like that.
If I had to correlate a land to the evolution of man, it would definitely be Tomorrowland. I think regardless of what period in time you look at, there's always that consistent wonder of what's next. And I think every time in human history we always try and guess, and we're so wildly wrong. So I think Tomorrowland is a perfect example of what a previous generation's views of the future would look like. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I always think we're going to look at the future and wonder what's next.
Genuinely walking around the park, I always feel happy. It's always a stress relief to go to Disneyland. Yeah, I just genuinely feel happy, and I know that if I go there, that I'm going to be taking myself away from the stresses of quote-unquote real life, which is kind of why I thought it was more of a utopian society than it is a real society.
Walking around Disneyland is one of the best feelings in the world. It's known as the happiest place on earth, and that isn't a lie. For the most part, I think it brings a wave of nostalgia. I had a pass for Disneyland and California Adventure for 5 years when I was growing up. And even now, when I walk back into a park, it takes me back to a carefree, easy time in my childhood when going to Disneyland was just an awesome experience. And every time I took different friends and was able to create new and lasting memories. So I think even now and in the future, I'll never get tired of Disneyland. Just walking around the park brings back so many things and so many memories, and lets me think fondly of all the places I've been.
As you can see, responses kind of varied. Hannah talked a lot about how Adventureland was a good metaphor for adventuring and being active, while Matt talked a lot about how Tomorrowland was a great ideal for looking towards the future and being adaptable for what could happen. In any case, Disneyland has shown us that not only can you create a theme park where people can have fun and experience something out of the norm, but you can create something that can stand the test of time and be analyzed by multiple different perspectives for years to come. Currently, Disneyland is working on their new project, Star Wars Land. This will be the 6th addition to the main theme park. The land itself will include different types of roller coasters, visual attractions, and plenty of character meet and greets as well. As you can see, they've already made great progress in creating a brand new addition. Who knows what will be analyzed next and how Star Wars Land can fit into the Disney narrative. Between the merchandise, the movie studio, the TV shows, and the different theme parks, Disney has given us some of the best media to analyze to date. The hidden themes, obscure topics, and incredible imagery will give researchers material to work on forever. Disneyland is a source of amazing architecture, visual culture, and most of all, happiness. Walt Disney's creation has surpassed anything that he thought possible, and that is the true magic. Whether it be Halloween time, Christmas time, or just a random day in the park, Disneyland will remain one of the most visually stunning theme parks ever. At the end of the day, Walt Disney said it best.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land. Here age relives fond memories of the past, and here youth may savor the challenge and promise of the future. Disneyland is dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America, with the hope that it will be a source of joy and inspiration to all the world.